Okay.
I'm excited that we are able to come together and do what we promised, and that is help you to reverse hypertension. Now, hypertension is the number one risk factor for death and disability in the world. All right, it's the number one risk factor for death and disability in the world. Um, Nearly 78 million Americans suffer from hypertension. That's about 1 in 3 persons living in the United States already have elevated high blood pressure. It's amazing. Oftentimes when I'm in a room, I'll be the only one, unless my wife is with me, that's not on blood pressure medicine. So this is a very, very common disease. Now, there's a common misconception that hypertension does not affect women or rarely affects women. The truth is, however, that nearly half of patients that have hypertension are women. Half the adult patients with hypertension are women, and even more strikingly, women represent about 52, over half of the deaths from hypertension. Now, issues like pregnancy prevention, birth control, menopause, all of these will increase the risk of women developing hypertension. Now, we've called hypertension a silent killer. And one of the problems is that very quietly it scars and it damages our arteries. And that damage, and if you could see on this slide, up at the top here, the lumen is nice and large, but as it comes down, you have this plaque formation on either side and this narrowing of the blood vessels. I mean, to the point that these blood cells have to sort of squeeze their way sometimes through the arteries, and this can lead to heart attacks, lead to strokes, lead to kidney failure, lead to eye damage, heart failure, and also this buildup of fatty buildup in the arteries, which along with calcium and inflammation forms this process we call atherosclerosis. Now, there are a number of complications of hypertension. And so here, this slide shows some of the organs that is affected. The brain with strokes, the eyes with glaucoma, with cataracts, with retinal hemorrhaging. So a lot goes on here in these eyes. The blood vessels, this atherosclerotic process we talked about, the enlargement of the heart, and heart attacks. It's amazing. I tell people, if you are American, you have left ventricular hypertrophy without even checking it. I just know because of the increase in hypertension, the increase in atherosclerosis. One of the things that was amazing to me early on when I left surgery and went into alternative medicine, I was reading some studies, and it was showing that babies that had died in utero, meaning they died before they were born, they checked their arteries, and they already had fatty streaks in the arteries. I see this word here is misspelled. Forgive me. Frank didn't catch that for me. Hypertension increases with age, and over when a person's over 60, um, more than half of them will have hypertension. Now, one of the questions is asked, is there anything we can do about it, or is it just inevitable that you're living in this country, you're going to get hypertension? Well, perhaps that's true if you live in this country, almost true. But researchers have measured the blood pressure. They looked at 1,000 people in rural Kenya, and they found that as they age, what happened? The blood pressures actually went down. The blood pressure actually went down. It was amazing to me early on when I was, even before I left surgery. I noted that as people age, their pressures went higher and higher and higher, because what happens is those vessels get stiff, and the heart has to increase the pressure in order to get blood up to the brain. All right, and so as you get older, those blood pressures go up and up and up. But in Kenya, because those blood vessels are soft and pliable, the blood pressures do not go up. So what's the difference? Well, they found that in these Kenyans, they were eating a diet that centered around whole foods. They were eating whole grains. They were eating beans. And you probably heard me say many times, I used to eat beans because I was poor. Now I eat them because I'm smart. All right, but they were eating these whole grains. They were eating beans, vegetables, fruits, and dark leafy vegetables, dark leafy greens, and as a result, their blood pressures just went down. Their blood pressures went down. Now, they did another study in Kenya, and they looked here at the admissions to a hospital. All right, and they looked at 1,800. That's a lot of people. 1,800 people, and they found that zero case, not one case, was there hypertension, and there was not one case of heart disease. Whereas here in the United States, heart disease is our #1 killer. But this is not just true in Kenya. In rural China, and you'll notice in both cases the word rural is used. In rural China, people had blood pressures 110 over 70 their entire lives. They found that people 70 years of age had the same blood pressure of someone who was 16. And they did the same thing. They had this plant-based diet that they ate on a day-to-day basis, and only on rare occasions would they eat meat. Only on rare occasions would they eat meat. But you don't have to go to China or Africa in order to have such a blood pressure. They found that even Americans on a strict plant-based diet can have blood pressures coming in at around 110 over 65. All right, but a strict plant-based diet. So what about salt? There's a lot that you hear about salt. We got to get off salt. My patients say, I don't use any salt anymore, doc. I'm off salt. Well, Brazilians living in the Amazon rainforest have what's called a no salt culture. They have the lowest intake of salt ever recorded in research. And they find that in their later years, they still have blood pressures 100 over 60. As they're getting older, 100 over 60. Now, to show that this is just not genetic, elsewhere in Brazil, in the cities and so forth, almost 40% of the population will have hypertension. You know, if you live and eat like an American, then you're going to die like an American. Now, there's a guy, Walter Kempner. Walter Kempner was someone who came from Nazi Germany, escaped from Nazi Germany, and went to Duke. And in 1939, he started a program called the Rice Diet, where he took patients that had blood pressures 210 over 140, and he got them down to 100 over 60 without any medication on this low, no salt, no oil, rice and fruit diet. All right. And it became known as the Rice Diet. Now, some people say, well, are all salts the same? Well, if you use refined salts, you know, we find that these refined salts actually will cause your blood pressure to rise. But if you use natural salts with adequate intake of water, you can actually stabilize irregular heartbeat and you can normalize the blood pressure. All right. In other words, if you have low blood pressure, sea salt, especially Himalayan salt, can actually raise your blood pressure. And if your blood pressure is high, it can actually lower the blood pressure. And the reason for this is that these salts are high in potassium. And we find that salts that are high in potassium and diets that are high in potassium will actually lower the blood pressure. And one article said, regardless of what the sodium intake is. In other words, if you get adequate potassium in your diets, and that's why these plant-based whole food diets, which are high in potassium, their blood pressures are low. I remember when I first left surgery, I worked with this doctor who had spent a lot of time in Africa. First went over as a missionary, and then he just stayed. He just loved it, and he would he would often go back to Africa, and he would say he was going for a month and end up spending 3 to 6 months there. You know, couldn't leave. And I remember one time he came back and he was so depressed. And I said, what's wrong? He said, when I was in Africa, all of my years, and he had been there over 20, 30 years, he said, I'd never seen hypertension. He said, now, even those in rural Africa often will have malignant hypertension, that 230/40 over 120/30 that we talked about. And I said, why is this? He said, because they're using a lot of salt, refined salts. And with that those blood pressures just shot up. Now, we've talked a little bit about the causes of hypertension. Now, what can we do to treat it? You know, when I left surgery and went into alternative medicine, well, before I was trying to define how I was going to call my practice, because there weren't a lot of people practicing And even now, not a lot of people practicing the way I practice. And initially, I said, I want to do preventative medicine. I want to keep people from getting sick. And then I ended up saying to myself, wait a minute, that's good, but a lot of people you see are already sick. And so we have to do more than just prevent them from getting sick. We have to also reverse the disease. All right. Now, all of the things that we've said earlier have been shown to be very effective in preventing disease. But we're also going to show that many of these things can also reverse. But the first thing I focus on, really with all my patients, because I believe that stress is the #1 cause of death in this country. The #1 cause of death. I've seen only one patient with cancer, for instance, that wasn't under significant stress for at least 2 years prior to the onset of cancer. And so stress reduction is something that you have to do. Now, stress comes from within, not from without. It's not your husband or your wife or your boss or your children or your job. None of that is causing you stress. Your husband may be crazy, but he can't cause you stress unless he's putting his hand on you. All right? And if he puts his hand on you, I know y'all take care of you when he goes to sleep. But stress comes from within. It's your response to the problem, not the problem itself that causes the stress. And so what you got to do, you got to take your burdens to the Lord. We do that, but you got to leave them there. That's the problem that we have. All right. And so I recommend daily prayer, spiritual reading, praise, laughter, singing. Remind me to give you a paper that I wrote on laughter therapy. I was looking at it today. I'm going to make sure that you get a copy of it. Laughter therapy, because laughter, singing, praise, all those things increase the endorphins and will help to bring down that blood pressure. So stress reduction is very important. Next is exercise. All right. Next is exercise. Walking. A lot of folks will talk about walk 20 minutes and 30 minutes. Well, that's nice. But even the World Health Organization recommends an hour. And I recommend an hour and a half. One of the things that Frank didn't read, for about 8 years, I was the medical director of this wellness center in Rapidan, Virginia, called Heartland. And people would come from all over the world. And I observed that the ones who walked an hour and a half to 2 hours a day seem to do better than anybody else. So I said, well, hey, if it's good enough for them, it's good enough for my patients. At the time, I was only recommending an hour. Then I started recommending an hour and a half for at least 90 days, and then you can drop it down to 60 minutes a day. All right? But you don't start out with an hour and a half if you haven't been exercising. If you only can walk 5 minutes, you walk 5 minutes, and then you rest. Actually, you walk until you start to get tired, and then you rest. And if you stop in time, you only need to rest 3 to 5 minutes. And then you walk again until you start to get tired, and then you rest. And then the third time until you start to get tired, and then you quit. And what happens is that as you do this, you gradually kick into that reserve. When you were younger and you stayed away from exercise for a while, and you go and you start exercising, you start getting a little short of breath, but you keep on going, because you're young and crazy, right? You keep on going and you get what? That second wind. And when you get that second wind, then you're able to go. But I tell my older patients, don't do that. Because before the second wind kicks in, the heart may kick out. So you want to gradually build up. and then you'll be able to do more, because that second wind, part of it is the alveoli in the lungs, the air sacs in the lungs beginning to open up. All right. There's something called platelet atelectasis. If you look at your X-rays, you'll probably see, or the radiologist can show you this platelet atelectasis at the bottom and the top, where if you don't use it, you lose it. The body just says, "Hey, let me shut these down for a while until they need it, and then we'll bring it back." And so this gradual program will help to bring them back. I remember when I first started it was with this lady. She had come to me because she had tried to have surgery on 2 different occasions, and they had to take her off the table because of her heart. So what happened was that her granddaughter said, "Look," her daughter told you, "I've been telling you, you need to go to Dr. Watkins." And so she came, I checked her out, and her heart and everything was pretty good. She was just out of shape. And so I put her on the treadmill, and I walked her until she started to get a little short of breath. It was 5 seconds. I stopped. Again, 10 seconds. Stop. 15 seconds. Stop. Go home. Come back. I did it the second time. And then the third time, my goal was to get her to a total of 10 minutes in the 3 times. The lady walked 30 minutes nonstop the first time. All right. Because she started kicking into that reserve. All right. And she was able to do much more. And so that's something good. The other thing is that sprint 8. And I should put jog and sprint 8, because initially you won't be able to sprint. You'll be able to just jog. So what you do is you walk, and the way the program is, you'll walk for 3 minutes, and then you'll jog or sprint for 30 seconds. And then you'll walk 1.5 minutes, and then you'll jog or sprint for 30 seconds. And then again, you do this for 8 times. They call it sprint 8. And what this does, it does even more rapidly what I was talking about with the 3 times. And it's an excellent program. And it's one of the ones that I love, because when I'm in a hurry, 20 minutes, I can get a good workout. Also, you want to do resistance training. A lot of your back issues and so forth is because of muscle weakness. So you want to do those sit-ups and leg lifts and little light weights. Those things are very, very good. Recumbent bicycle, elliptical, treadmill, rebounder. Now, this rebounder is good for the lymphatics, but it also helps if you're a little depressed, that rebounder helps to decrease depression. And so all these things are excellent for getting on a good exercise program. And then you want to do nutrition. All right. You want to do nutrition. And the first thing I recommend is that modified rice diet that Dr. Kempman started. I used to, some of you may know that I have a very good juicing cleansing program, that modified fasting program that I use with my patients. And actually, I put just about all of them on this program. And I used to call it the best kept secret in town. Now I call it the second best kept secret in town, because the rice diet, I believe, is the best kept secret, because it will literally reverse just about all organ systems. All right. If I can catch you, before you kill, we can get improvement with the rice diet. My oldest brother, he did not follow the transcript that I followed. He would eat anything. He smoked, a little everything. And back, what was it, 2018, I guess it was. I was trying to reach him and couldn't. Finally, got a friend to go to his house, and they found him in there, got him to the hospital. Then I went down, spent actually 2.5 months. The boy had hypertension. He had kidney failure, congestive heart failure. He'd had 2 heart attacks. He'd had his second stroke. He had diabetes. He had COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and altered mental status. Oh, and he had gangrene in his foot. And so the doctor said he's going to have to have an amputation. And I talked to my brother. I said, now, I've helped people reverse all these diseases. I'll be more than happy to help you if you're willing to change. And so he said, whatever you call me Rocky. He said, Rocky, whatever you tell me to do, I'm going to do. And so the doctor came in and said, you know, you're going to need an amputation. I said, no, he doesn't need an amputation. He got, look at his feet. Feet are black. He got gangrene. I said, I told you he doesn't need an amputation. He told me he's willing to change. I've treated people worse than him. If he's willing to change, we will reverse it. It's been over 3 years now, and he still got those feet, you know, because he was willing to change. It was funny. One day he told me, he said, Rocky, either your cooking is getting better or my taste buds are changing. I said, it's probably a little of both. So you can definitely change. I put him on that rice diet. That's what I did. I put him on the rice diet, and you know, and everything other than the rice was raw. Okay, everything other than the rice was raw. And then after the 2.5 months, I brought him up here for another year, and kept him going. So you know, you can also use the juicing program, and the juicing program was the most effective program I used, other than until I started using the modified rice diet. When I started using the rice diet, the juice program is very good, but it doesn't work nearly as fast as the rice diet. And certainly being a vegan, and when you're on the rice diet, you are a vegan. When you're on the juice diet, you are a vegan. And when you're on this nearly raw diet, you're a vegan. So all of those are vegan programs. So I've told you the modified rice diet. Dr. Kempner, he started these patients. They would have blood pressures 240 over 140, and he would get them down within a month's time to 100 over 60. Right? But in addition to reversing the blood pressure, could someone mute their lines, please? In addition to getting the blood pressure down, the eyes, you know, oftentimes you have the retinal hemorrhaging into the eyes, you have the glaucoma, all of that would be reversed. I remember he had presented, and he was a researcher, you know, and he had presented, Walter, could you please mute your line?
I got it.
He had presented at a conference, and he showed these slides of before and after of the eyes. You know, before they were swollen, bloody, scarry. After, almost perfect. And so the one of the doctors accused him of being dishonest and showing the after pictures first and the before pictures after. And the head of ophthalmology said, no, I took those pictures. And it shocked me, because normally you would expect the person with this kind of disease not to even be alive after 2 years. But here in 2 years' time, not only are alive, all of the changes in the eyes are reversed. But not only the eyes, the kidneys, the heart, etc., are reversed on this rice diet. One of the first persons that I treated on this program had a severe congestive heart failure. His heart was markedly enlarged, and his ejection fraction was 16. The normal ejection fraction should be at least 50, and you would like it to be 60 to 65. His was 16. His heart was markedly enlarged. After 2 weeks, it shrank down to, it was the upper limits of normal, and in 2 more weeks, total of 30 days, it was down to normal in size. You know, he was wearing a vest that would, if he had irregular beats, would shock him. All that was reversed in less than a month on this rice diet. Now, the risk of becoming a hypertensive is significantly affected by your diet. All right, and so this slide here is showing meat eaters. The people who did this study, the Adventist Health Study too, they found that in most cases, 9 out of 10 Americans would actually become hypertensive. And so they said, they looked at the meat eaters, and all of them basically became hypertensive. And then they found that if they were a semi-vegetarian, meaning they ate a lot of vegetables, but they also ate a little fish, a little chicken, their blood pressures, their likelihood of becoming hypertensive decreased almost 10%. If they were vegetarians, meaning they ate no meat, but they would eat a little cheese, drink a little milk, they would almost get down to 50% of what the meat eaters. But if they were vegans, they would get down to closer to 2/3 of them would not become hypertensive. And if they were, this slide doesn't show it, but if they were plant-based whole food, because you can be a vegan and still be eating potato chips, all right, then it would get even lower, down to 20% or lower. Now, there are certain herbs that are also very good for hypertension, and one of them is hibiscus. And what hibiscus does, it boosts the nitric acid. All right, Viagra. What it does, it boosts the nitric acid, and that helps the arteries to relax and to dilate. All right, so you can get more blood flow through there. And they found that if you drink 2 cups of hibiscus with a total of 5 tea bags in those 2 cups, that it was as effective at lowering the blood pressure as taking captopril, 25 milligrams twice daily. All right, but without the side effects. All right. They found that flaxseed was even better. All right, the hibiscus would get you down to 5 systolic, 2 to 3 drop in diastolic, like this Vasotec, which is what we call an ACE inhibitor. All right, it would get the blood pressure down a little bit. You know, most of you are probably taking Vasotec, Norvasc, I'm sorry, which is amlodipine. Amlodipine is the generic, and it gets the blood pressure systolic down about 8, and the diastolic about 2. But the flaxseed gets the systolic down about 10, and the diastolic down about 7. Now, the Vasotec has a whole bunch of side effects. All right, dizziness, lightheadedness, dry cough, you know, And this dry cough is very, very common. You know, when a patient comes to me and they tell me they got this dry cough, one of the first things I ask them, are you on the ACE inhibitor? Because if they are, that's going to happen. Loss of taste, loss of appetite, etc. All these itching, nausea, vomiting, dry mouth. The Norvasc, you get the headaches, the dizziness, the drowsiness, the tired feeling, upset stomach, flushing, you know. But the side effect that you get with the flaxseed is this pleasant, nutty taste. Pleasant, nutty taste. That's it. You know, one writer said that flaxseed induced one of the most potent antihypertensive effects achieved by any dietary intervention. So flaxseed is just a tremendous aid in getting that blood pressure down. Two herbs that I use in my practice, one is called Comtrex. Comtrex contains a lot of what we call nervines. It helps to relax you, but it does it in a very gentle manner. But that also helps to get the blood pressure down because stress is a major thing. And then Circugard is another one, and it contains a lot of herbs that affect the heart and blood vessels. And so we use that along with hawthorn berry. Hawthorn berry is just a very, very, and hawthorn berry is in the Circugard, but sometimes I will give patients hawthorn berry by itself. You know, you can go up to 3 times the recommended dose, and it just brings that blood pressure down. I think that was the last slide. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them at this time.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yes.
How much flaxseed do you have to eat each day?
Okay, so it's about 30 grams, which is about 3 tablespoons. And you can take that and you can put it in your smoothie. You can put it in your cereal, your salads, your soups. You know, any way to get it in. You know, you can do that. But about 3 tablespoons a day.
Ground up and fresh.
Yes, ground up. And I recommend that you do it freshly. Like with my smoothies, I will take the seeds, I'll put them in a dry blender. I'll turn it on, blend it up, you know, just a minute. And then I'll put the other ingredients in so it's fresh. Some people say, well, you can keep it in the refrigerator. You can, but you lose. I mean, you don't lose everything, but you lose some. So it's much better to do it fresh.
Okay.
Does everybody know how to raise a digital hand? Raise your digital hand and we can recognize you.
I don't know how to do that.
Okay, otherwise stay on mute. If you don't know how to do it, that's okay. Just
Okay.
ask.
Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions?
Doc, I have one.
Yes, sir.
What about junk food? You know, junky vegan food. Why
So
is that?
that was the point I was making about being a vegan.
Mm-hmm.
You could be a vegan and eat junk food, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So what you see, most people who are proponents of natural medicine, they talk about this whole food plant-based diet where you're getting those junk foods out, because those junk foods are really dangerous, you know, and so they often are very high in the omega-6 and 9 fatty acids. and low in the omega-3 fatty acids. And I remember reading a study. They were saying that in this particular study, the vegans were having the same incidence or higher than the meat eaters in terms of death from heart disease. And when they looked into the situation, they found out that what was happening, they were eating a lot of corn oil, you know, and, which is high in omega-6 and omega-9 fatty acids. When they got them off of that and got them on the levels of much higher levels of omega-3 fatty acids, their incidence of heart disease dropped dramatically, and they outlive all of those other folks. So it's not, you know, it's what you eat. You got to eat the right kinds of foods. It really makes a big difference.
Mm-hmm. We have another question from Zoom user. Go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
It might be me, Peter. Hi.
No.
I'm sorry if I missed. What type of rice and what about quinoa? Is that as good or better or not?
So you notice I said modified rice diet, and the reason I said modified is because we use all grains. We use quinoa, we use bulgur wheat, we use oatmeal. Any of the grains will work with this program, and there are basically 3 phases of the program, and each of you will be getting a copy of it. You know, the first phase is you're doing grains and fruit, and that occur. You'll be doing that for about 3 to 4 weeks. All right, and then after that, we add vegetables, beans, salads, and we call that phase 2. And you'll stay on that if you're overweight until you get to your ideal weight. And then the third phase, which I'm in, and I've been in the third phase for about 6 years now. You have other foods. You can do the soy, you can do the nuts and so forth, seeds, and that third phase.
And when we're thinking of starting?
The goal is next Monday. You'll be getting tonight or tomorrow, you'll be getting a copy of the rice diet. I want you to go over it, and we will. Frank was going to set up. I believe you're going to set up another answering session, Frank.
Yeah.
Where we can answer any questions that you could have on that, and then you should be ready to roll.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, Peter. We got a question from Zoom user.
Richard?
So that's probably me. I heard you mention nuts in I think you said the second phase. So does that mean you have to eliminate nuts when you begin this process?
Actually, you heard me incorrectly. I said nuts in the third phase.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, nuts in the third phase, and this is not an easy program. It's a hard program, but what you have to do is you have to look in the mirror, and you have to see somebody worth changing for, because through this program you can almost eliminate the likelihood of having a heart attack, a stroke, kidney failure, you know. But it's a hard program. But it you know, I don't have any of those, but I've stuck with it for going on 7 years now. Why? Because I love me.
Doc, we got a text from a patient that had a stroke tonight. So a stroke is harder than this program. A heart attack is harder. Amputation is harder. Going blind is harder. Kidney disease is much harder. Dialysis. I saw my brother get his life sucked out of him from dialysis, and he died. That's harder. So feeling bad all the time, taking these medications, that you don't need, it's definitely harder. So make up your mind, see it from that point of view, and that will help you.
So let me also say this. Normally, if you were just regular patients, I would probably recommend our fasting cleansing program first. And that's a 2-week liquid diet program. And it makes it a lot easier to transition from that to the rice diet. But Kempner didn't do that. He just put him straight on the rice diet, and it worked. I mean, I actually went straight on the rice diet. I didn't even do the cleansing first. I just did the rice diet, and it worked. The first day, it shocked my taste buds, because I don't use salt, very little or no salt in my foods, no oil, even less oil. But when I would eat rice, I would put a little salt, a little oil in my rice. I did it with none, and it was a shock. Now, the beautiful thing is I've learned a lot in those 6 years, and one of the things that I've learned is how to make the food much more palatable. Because one day I was eating blueberries, organic blueberries, with my rice. That was the fruit that I was eating that day, and that meal. But the blueberries, even though they were organic, they weren't very sweet. And so I added just a little bit of maple syrup, and pow! Oh boy, it was like the windows of heaven was opened up, and I discovered this is why they put sugar in vegetables, because just that little bit of maple syrup. And when you read the program, you'll see that Kempner even recommended you could have sugar. I don't recommend sugar. I recommend maple syrup. I recommend raw honey or agave or something like that. And for you real hardcore stevia, which I can't stand, but yeah. But there are ways that you can make the food really taste good, but you really want to focus on what you're trying to accomplish.
What do you think about sugar cane rather than honey and those other sweeteners?
No, sugar cane. Well, I don't know. We used to eat sugar cane as when I was very young, and I'll have to go back and review that, because I was discussing sugar cane with someone a few months ago, and it's actually supposed to be pretty healthy. So if it's straight sugar cane, it's probably okay. But I will review that for you.
Thank you. Okay.
Let me add to that, your taste buds will change if you change. If you decide to change, your taste buds will change and they'll readjust, so that you'll be able to get along with no salt or very little sugar or sweetness. We recommend that you get rid of processed sugar anyway. It's a killer. We'll send you information about that.
Sugar causes a lot of inflammation, and inflammation is associated with almost all of the 10 leading causes of death. I mean, inflammation is horrible. Those refined foods, inflammation. Sugar, inflammation. So those hydrogenated sugars, sweeteners, a lot of inflammation, causing leaky gut and all kind of other problems. And so you just don't want that. The other thing is, I'm going to give you something called the 4 Ps. What is your passion? What is God's purpose? A written plan, and the implementation or production of that plan. Because what I find is most people really are not happy. And they're not happy because they're not really doing what they want to do. But when they start focusing on what they really want to do and start seeing themselves doing it, then it's much easier. Did we answer the Zoom person? Then
I have a
Jill,
question.
go ahead.
How does one manage this process if you're on vacation?
That's up to the individual. One of my very good friends called me, actually 2 years ago now. He had been just diagnosed. Well, his wife actually called me. He had just been diagnosed with kidney failure. So the wife asked the doctor, well, what can I do to reverse my husband's kidney failure? And he said, just face it, you're going to be on dialysis. He's going to be on dialysis, you know. And she got upset and she called me. She said, Ted, what can we do? I said, let me talk to your husband. I talked to him. I got history and so forth. I said, look, I'm going to send you a copy of my rice diet. He was going, this was on a Tuesday. That Thursday, he was leaving on a cruise. So I thought he was going to start the rice diet when he came back from the cruise. Instead, that boy started his rice diet on the cruise. All right. And it's very interesting because he had an upset stomach and so forth. So they went to the doctor and his wife said, you know, well, he's been diagnosed with kidney disease. And you know, and one of the complications of kidney disease can be, you know, nausea and vomiting and so forth. But when the doctor checked, his glomerular filtration rate had already started to rise. His creatinine had already started to drop. In other words, he had already started getting better within a week on the program. When he got back, he went to his private physician, all right? And he repeated the blood. He got better. 2 weeks later, he came to me. I repeated it. He got better. The boy got off all his medication, but that crazy rascal started on a cruise.
Okay, thank you.
But he was determined, you know, and I told him, I'm just proud of you. Proud of you, boy. And not only that, he lost a lot of weight. I said, you're trying to get handsome like me, man. Because he was definitely overweight, but all that went away.
Let me take a stab at that, Doc. So what I do is plan. I'm on the internet looking for juice bars. I'm looking for vegan food, and you know, I'm recording all that. I'm writing it out or digitally recording it, and that way I know where to go. And before I get there, the hours, the directions, and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I know.
Yeah, and actually, I just thought about it. I actually did the rice diet on a cruise. I didn't start on the cruise, but I did it on that cruise, and I found some places where they would serve a lot of. By that time, I was doing in the second phase, so I was doing beans and rice and vegetables and so forth, salad, and so I was able to do quite well on that cruise.
Yeah.
Look like Jill's iPad.
Yes, I'm still here. I'm listening to this, and I have to tell you that I am feeling anxious because as I hear you talk about the modified rice diet, it sounds like, as you call it, phases. How does one go from one phase to the next? And I ask this question because if you don't have a weight problem, you are doing if you're doing a lot of these things already, all I keep thinking about is I'm gonna pass out on the tennis court.
Oh no, dear. I'm an excellent athlete. I have no weight problem. I have none of that, you know. And one of the beauties of doing the program with me is we monitor. We're going to have a program of monitoring you. You'll get that information, and you'll be reporting every day. All right, for at least the first 30 days, you'll report every day, and then you also have Frank's number, my number. If necessary, you will call. You know, we will make sure that you have the opportunity to be successful. You know, I hate to lose. All right, I hate to lose. If you talk to my wife, we were in college together, even though we didn't date. She would talk about me on that basketball court with my big mouth because you're not gonna push me around. You know, they call me Weenie Bill. You know, I am not going down. You know, so that's the same attitude that we take with this program, and so you will have the support. The other thing is we have to do that because if you're on medication, we got to get you off those medications because on the rice diet, if you do the rice diet right, generally in 3 to 5 days, you're off medication with a normal blood pressure. All right, 3 to 5 days. Now you're still hypertensive, but you don't need medicine to control your blood pressure. And then over time, you will cease to be hypertensive.
Hey, Doc.
Yes, sir.
You told me a story about someone that went back to their old ways earlier. Please tell that story.
Oh Lord. This guy. I mean, you know, unfortunately, you have some favorites. This guy was one of my favorites. He was just such a nice guy, and he had valvular heart disease, he had hypertension, he had diabetes, he had kidney failure, and so he was one of probably about the third person I put on the rice diet, and I'd have all my patients go to the cardiologist and go to the ophthalmologist, all right, because I wanted to document the changes. And so I told him after a couple of days to go to the cardiologist and get your blood pressure, get your medication adjusted. So the brother was hard-headed. So he called me up one day, Doc, I'm dizzy. My blood pressure is 70, 72 or something like that, over about 52. I said, get in here, boy. So he comes in and I cut all his medicines in half. I said, now go to the heart doctor and tell him what I did. So he goes to the heart doctor. He said, okay, what Doc did is correct. And then after a week or two, I didn't hear anything from him. And so his wife was also my patient, and she came in. I said, is your husband sinning? And she said, yeah. So I called him up, I jacked him up, get him back on the program, and then he gets off again. I jack him up again. He gets back on the program. And then several months, called him up again. I said, come on in. He comes in. He said, Doc, I'm going to think about it. Because his kidneys were getting worse and worse. I said, man, you don't have a lot of time. You know, if you don't do something soon, you're going to be on dialysis. Matter of fact, the doctors would recommend dialysis then. I said, I can prevent that if you act. But if you don't act, so he calls me up after about 2-3 weeks. He said, Doc, I decided I'm going to do dialysis. I said, all right. You know, I don't consider myself my patient's boss. My patients are my boss because they pay me. I don't pay them. So I said, okay. And so he went and did dialysis, started dialysis. And in a few weeks, he called me up almost crying. Doc, I should have listened to you. You know, this was terrible. I shouldn't have done this. Blah, 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 blah. A few weeks later, the brother was dead. I mean, it hurt me so bad because he didn't have to die. He chose to die. And that's why I go through all these, you know, flips, trying to help you to motivate yourself, to see who you are, to recognize that you are of value and that you can. I love to eat. You know, high school, I went to boarding academy, and then college, my nickname was Weenie Bill. But when the cafeteria door opened, Weenie Bill walked in. Even then, I was a vegetarian, all right? But I would eat food that was good to me, but also good for me, you know? And so that's what you have to do. You have to learn, and we'll help you. We have nutritionists. I think one of them is on the line even tonight that will help you in the process if necessary.
Yeah,
All right, Brother Frank.
One more question. Like you said, since we're taking medication, and once we start this diet, we also have to include the doctors that we go to presently, right? And tell them about this particular program. And also, I was wondering, how would we know if like, for instance, my pressure is close to normal now, I'm taking the medicine. As I go through the program, how would I know when it's time to start taking or to come off of the
because you're going to be contacting us every day.
Every day?
And we're going to be reviewing. Yeah, Frank's going to have you email your numbers in on a daily basis. You'll be taking your blood pressure at least twice a day. The next morning, email them in by 9 o'clock. Before you take medication, we'll review them. If you're at a point where you need to cut back on the medicines, then we'll do so. Now the issue in terms of your doctors, now that's a very sticky thing. A lot of patients will talk to their doctors and fine. And the doctors, some will go forward, some will say, no, don't do that. I mean, it's up to you. I guarantee you, your doctors have not reversed hypertension, kidney failure, things that I've done. So you have to decide what you're going to do. I don't try to tell you what to do. You have to make that decision. But if you want to change, you're going to have to change. All right. The only way to get off, most of you, if you've been hypertensive, you started on one medicine, then you go to 2 to 3, sometimes even 4 medications, and your blood pressure is still not controlled. There's something wrong with that picture. And the problem is they don't really know how to reverse it.
I see. So they just continue to give you the medications over time.
Sorry?
I said they just continue to give you the medication.
And they keep adding on the medication and
Right.
changing the medicine.
Right.
And you know, all those side effects, you know, the things that I'm telling you, the only side effect you get is better health, you know.
That's it.
But you have to be in charge of your health, you know. Now, one of my patients, she was on, I think last week, gave a testimony, the young attorney, when she got diabetes, she knew me, and the doctor thought that she was crazy to follow the program. She said, I'm going to follow Uncle Teddy's program. And you know, she would call me every day. I'd have her call me every morning. And sometimes she called 2 and 3 times a day. I've had some patients, the young man I told you that had the really bad heart, he would call me 6 and 7 times a day. And I would take his call. Why? Because he wanted to get well, and he got well. But he was scared, you know, he was scared because the doctors had told him, one doctor said, you know, he may have to have a heart transplant. All right. And his heart transplant was rice.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go online, you can read about Dr. Kempner, Walter Kempner. He was a outstanding. They say that he was perhaps the first medical researcher at Duke University. All right, the first medical researcher at Duke, and you know.
All right. It's
so we'll get you the
8:42.
information. You'll look over it, and then Frank, but maybe Thursday or so we need to come back together again.
That
You
sounds
work it
good.
out with them.
Yeah, I'll work it out.
I'm gonna jump off. You work it out with them, and I'll make myself available.
Okay.
All right. It's
All
been
right.
my pleasure.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Say thank you.
Thank
You're
you.
more,
Thank you.
you're more than welcome. I'm
Yeah.
excited for you.
Thank you.
All right. Bye now.
Take care. Bye.
So is Thursday evening good for everyone?
Oh,
Sure. It's good for me. Same time.
Same
yes.
time. Same time. I know Peter's traveling. I hope he can get on. He's going to Zanzibar. I hope you will be able to get on, Peter. And I'll record it as well. So we'll be sending out a YouTube link for both sessions. Okay?
Okay. Great.
Okay, that'll work.
Good, good.